Is there anything more powerful and effective than truly connecting with your potential buyer? Today, I'm going to give you one tool that if you practice and master, you'll make an incredible connection. You'll build trust quickly, frame your buyer's perceptions in a much more positive way, and ultimately make it much easier to make a sale. Hey guys, my name is Joey Thomas, entrepreneur and small business educator here with 17 Hats. I want you to know that connection is everything, yet sometimes it's quite elusive. There are so many personality types and circumstances that could possibly make it a challenge to feel that connection to your potential client. For example, if you are speaking to a highly analytical person, a thinker type personality, they might want to focus on features and the pricing or focus on details and logistics, while the socializer type personality is much more relationship oriented and outgoing, making it more natural to connect if you're the same. See, but that's the key. People tend to connect with those who are more like them. It feels a little bit more natural. What do you do when you're a natural connector, but your client is cautious and logical? Here's what you do. You ask great questions. That's what today is about. It's about questions. It's the most powerful tool in sales. It is the thing that's going to connect you so much faster than all of these traditional and old school sales techniques. So the key is that questions bridge the gap between where your potential buyer is and where you want them to go. The better the question, the better the bridge. So questions also show that you care, that you are focused on a solution to their problem and not just squarely focused on selling a product. You show that you're interested in making a proper fit between what you have to offer and what needs they have. Questions also help you get over speed bumps along the way, helping your buyer get out of a singularly focused rut. Now, questions also help you get little mini yeses along the way, which helps align their thoughts, wants, and needs with your offer. So remember, our role is to serve. So it's to provide the buyer with a real solution. And it should be important to us to be authentic about that process. The great thing is asking questions will serve us as well as serve the client, because we can build our own confidence about what we're offering. Ultimately, with the understanding of how to implement great questions, you build value as a trusted advisor. Okay, so now let's talk about a few types of questions that are effective during the sales process. First of all, I want to tell you about a great resource. A resource that I think that you're going to love. It's a book called Spin Selling, S-P-I-N. It's all about asking the right questions that will lead to a sale. I personally love this book. For years and years, I was kind of using my own way to make sales, to make sales happen. And from day one, I was closing at a 95% rate. And I started looking at all of the parts of a sale and started writing them down. And I was talking to a buddy of mine, going through the process. He said, "Hey man, this sounds so much like Spin Selling. Why don't you check out the book?" And I did. Spin Selling is a book that breaks down the strategy called Spin Strategy. And spin sounds for S is for situation, P is for problem, I is for implication, and N is for need payoff. Now, there are all types of questions, right? The book is based on 12 years of research and 35,000 sales calls written by Neil Rackham. So here's a quick summary, and I want you to have this summary before we go into a few more ideas about questions. Okay, so a situational question assesses the lay of the land. It gathers as much information so you know where your buyer is currently. For example, here's a situational question. how do you capture leads on your website today? Now, I capture leads, and let's say I am trying to talk to someone about implementing a new lead capture form on their website. I use 17 Hats as a lead capture form because it seamlessly organizes and automates that whole lead capture process for me. Now, here's another question. How important is the traffic from your website to your business? So that's a situational question. A problem question is a way to identify pains and problems that the buyer experiences. For example, are you happy with your contact page on your website? If not, what challenges are you facing right now? Or when you have issues with the site, is it easy to problem solve? The next one is an implication question. An implication question highlights the possible consequences of leaving these problems unresolved. For example, how does this affect the number of leads that are coming through your website? Or how do potential clients feel if you don't respond fairly quickly to their inquiries? And the last one is a need payoff question. A need payoff question helps your buyer draw their own conclusions rather than pitching them on your idea. For example, how many more sales do you think you'd close if more leads came through your website? Another example, would you be able to divert your energy into something that needs more attention if you had a lead capture system such as 17 Hats offers to help streamline your communication and response times? Well, these are the types of questions Spin Selling book goes over. Get the book, guys. It is awesome. It's not only going to help you understand the best type of questions, but it'll also help you understand the stages in which you should ask questions. Okay, so now we've heard the phrases open-ended questions or closed questions. Let's get into that for a couple of minutes. Open-ended questions are questions that require more explanation to get an answer rather than a simple yes or no. An open-ended question is a great question to ask at the beginning of a conversation or somewhere in the middle to keep that conversation rolling, right? So here's an example. In addition to price, what other factors are important to you? That's a great open-ended question. All right, so a closed question is also necessary at times. You just have to know when to use it. A closed question is one that can answer with a simple one-word answer, such as a yes or a no. Now, a closed question helps in situations where you need a concrete answer. Small little yeses along the way to get some concrete ideas or to know where they're at. For example, do you feel that adding a lead form that can help you respond to your clients quicker will help you connect better with your potential clients? It could be just a yes or no answer. Or when you're trying to close a sale, will you need a payment plan or will you be paying in full today? That's a simple one-word answer. Payment plan, paying in full, right? Or a yes or no. So just being picky, though, and strategic is important when using closed questions. If you use it too much, you can create a very one-sided conversation with no momentum at all. Now, sales success usually begins with the ability to ask good and powerful questions and then listen. Really listen to the answers, okay? And timing is also key. So for example, if you have decided you need to ask a budget or price question, asking it too early in a conversation, you have brought the focus into pricing at a stage where it's not going to be helpful and you haven't had the opportunity to really build value around it. Instead, you want to ask questions early that identify pain points and add meaning to the possible solution. Now, once you have taken the time to build value, now price or budget questions can have more value and create a necessary moment of tension in that conversation. So what do I mean by tension? What I mean by tension is that it creates a moment in which the buyer begins to evaluate the price in relation to the value that you have now discussed with your potential client. And it begins to have an internal dialogue about the need of this service or product. Now, questions also help frame your offering as an opportunity. So asking questions that dig a little deeper to the client's concerns show a level of care and empathy to the situation. For example, what experiences, good or bad, have you had when you tried to implement lead capture forms in the past? Did that process work well for you? And how would you change the process to fit your needs a little better? So you also want to ask questions that build rapport with the buyer. So along with concern type questions, you also want to build rapport with the buyer. Respectfully asking a few general personal questions can go a long way. For example, if you know the client has kids, and for example, I have kids, so asking what grade they are in or what they're doing in the summer is a great icebreaker, right? Especially after you've shared some personal information about yourself, you can make a connection this way. For example, if you love cars, you can also ask how they like their car and if they could recommend it. These type of questions really kind of help set the stage and relax. Now, the next kind of question you want to ask is a question that brings clarity to the situation. For example, can you tell me more about that? Or how does it affect your day when you have leads piling up on you? And those type of questions bring clarity to what their situation is right now. Now, you also want to ask questions that address objections before they happen. Here's an example. If adding an automated lead capture form, what problems, if any, do you anticipate? Or do you have any thoughts or hesitations? Now, these bring attention to possible objections. Here's one of my favorite questions to ask very early in the client relationships. As a matter of fact, I ask this question on the very first phone call after I get the lead. Now, here's the question. Of the hundreds of options you've had, why did you decide to reach out to me? Now, guys, this is gold. I'll repeat the question. Of the hundreds of options you've had, or of the hundreds of accountants, of the hundreds of web designers, of the hundreds of photographers that you've had to choose, why did you decide to reach out to me? See, here you can find out if the client has done their research or if they're just shopping. See, this gives them the opportunity to sell themselves on how you are different from your competition. Now, I take these very seriously. I take these answers, I write them down. I then remember everything that the client said, and I make sure that I confirm each and every one through the process by giving examples of how I do these things and how it benefits them. Now, what I do is when I do that, and as I confirm their likes, right? When I confirm that initial feeling along the way, it just establishes this sense of trust and this sense that they had the right feeling all along. Questions are powerful. I want you to remember that today. Questions are powerful. It is the single most powerful technique you can learn for consistent sales. Okay? Watch this video again. Write down the different types of questions, those examples I gave you, and come up with your own examples and how you can use it, right? Just write it down. Just brainstorm the timing when you want to ask certain questions in your conversation. Although questions are vital, don't forget to listen. The answers to the questions mean nothing if you don't take their responses and serve your client in a better way. Questions aren't just to sell. It's important in serving and serving well. Once you ask the questions, stay silent. Show that you are listening and validate their answers by repeating some of them back. This shows that you understand, and in the end, it's all about being the trusted advisor who is more interested in them than just what you are selling. Well, guys, once again, thank you so much for hanging out with me today and just taking this in. I hope you take this to heart. I hope you practice your questions and really dive into it. If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe to our channel, and I will be back with many more videos like this. You guys have a good day.